So, as soon as the bell, the horn sounded on the Oilers' season, the knives came out, and most of them were pointed at Jordan Eberle. And rightfully so. His totals were really, really poor in the playoffs. Good, talented young player, enigma in the playoffs. We've seen him before. Your Alexei Yashin types. Some would argue your Danny Heatley types. The guys who, in big games, you may not be able to count on them as much as you'd like, especially for the money you're paying them. And from what Peter Chiarelli said, I just read the interview with him, the money was a big part of it. $6 million a year for Eberle for what he does is a lot of money. It is. It's a sizable amount of money for any player. But for Eberle, it was probably too much. And I'm looking at Ryan Nugent-Hopkins because he's saying that Strome is a natural center and you can put two centers on a line and it's advantageous to the team. And it is. He's not lying. But to me, Ryan Strome could slot into the number 3 center spot. He makes $3.5 million. $3.5 million is his cap. So that saves $2.5 million off what Eberle was making. Now, if he can flip Nugent-Hopkins, I know. Is it likely? No. One or the other was going to move, and it's Eberle. And maybe Nugent-Hopkins moves next summer. They have Draisaitl to sign, and then next year it's the big one. It's Armageddon, man. It's McDavid. Does he get the league max? Are we looking at a $14 million a year player? He's worth it. If anybody's worth league max right now, it's other than Sidney Crosby, it's McDavid. And the Oilers have to make room for him, and certainly switching out from Eberle to Strome, it's a funny thing because they've now lost Hall and Eberle, two of the building blocks, two of the key big name players that were supposed to lead this team back to the promised land, and they got back Adam Larson and Ryan Strome. And yet, I actually like the deal from both sides. The Islanders get the better player. Maybe he turns his game around, and maybe he turns his game around with the Islanders. But remember now, Taylor Hall, everybody said, oh, Hall's going to tear up the NHL. And he, through no fault of his own, he didn't with New Jersey this past season. But if Hall was as good as some fans claimed he was, he would have been able to. See, and it's a fine line, and I try to stay away from it. When people ask me, which player do you think is better between these two guys, usually I'll see those comments and I go, no. Nuh-uh. I'm not playing that game because every player is different. It's the same as the draft preview issue where they're saying he reminds us of, and they name a player for every guy in the top 50, and it's like, you can't do that. You can think it, but you can't pigeonhole players because all players are different. They're all different. So we'll see what happens with Eberle. I like Eberle. I think his cap hit's too high. I'm glad he didn't come to Vancouver. So before anybody asks, no, we've already got a $6 million winger who wasn't able to perform last year up to what we wanted. If Eberle came to Vancouver, the expectation would be, oh, he'll click with the Sedins, he'll score 30. I can hear them now. And it wouldn't have happened. And then it just would have been crazy again. So I'm glad that the Canucks didn't take on that cap. I'm mildly surprised the Islanders did, and yet they're trying to convince Tavares that they're getting better. I know, Tavares has said all the right things publicly, and he may very well be telling the truth about, I want to spend the rest of my career in this organization. He may. But there have been plenty of players who've said, I plan to be here forever, and then within a year or two, or 6 months even, they're out. Because things happen. And it's sometimes not the player that does it, sometimes it's the GM. And for Garth Snow, if we're looking at the trade deadline, and if the Islanders, let's say the Islanders are out of a playoff spot, and they're not going to make it, is Garth Snow going to just let Tavares go for nothing, potentially at the end of the year, or is he going to move him for a big return? That's tricky, especially since next year's draft is considered to be a pretty damn good one. So if you can get a couple of good draft picks back, or you can get a bunch of young assets back for Tavares rather than losing him for nothing. Those talks are going to heat up. But between now and then, the Islanders have to show that they're doing everything they can to get better. And everything they can to add scoring, defense, improve the goaltending, all of it. So that they can go to John Tavares and say, see, we've got something exciting going on here, and you need to be a part of it. And it could work. It absolutely could work. It might work. We'll see if it works. But it's a good deal. It's, you know, Eberle kept coming back to saving on cap. And that's, you know, if Eberle was making, say, $4 million a year, this deal doesn't happen. I would even argue that if Eberle's contract was up at the end of this coming season, this trade doesn't happen. The fact that it has, I believe it's 2 years left at $6 million per, means that second year would overlap with whatever McDavid gets and what Draisaitl's going to get this offseason. It's a lot of money. So every cent that you can save under the cap so that you can re-sign and keep Draisaitl and McDavid, you do it. So I don't think this is the end of it for Edmonton. The funny thing was, they said at the press conference he wasn't asked about Griffin Reinhart leaving. Griffin Reinhart wasn't playing for the Oilers, so there's not much point in asking. They're like, he didn't make any side deals. Good thing, because all they lost was Griffin Reinhart. I'm floored to this day, and from this day forward, that's all that happened. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And I have a funny feeling that the trades will ramp up as we get up towards free agency. You're going to see some of the free agents to be having their rights traded for future considerations to other teams. Those future considerations will be, ta-da, draft picks. So draft picks are being handed out and lapped up like water right now. We'll see who ends up with the most draft picks. I'm looking at you, Vegas. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.